So, so what's happening with the pulls is from the side view, because it's up above, you're getting here and you're pulling past the body and it's pulling your shoulder blade up into a shrugged position and pushing the head of your arm bone forward. You see I'm pulled back this way and see this is starting to bulge forward like this. If you just do that while you're sitting there, you'll feel how tight and how much pressure you get right up here in the neck. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, that makes sense. And yes, I am pulling all the way down. I figured because I
Well,
have the range of motion to do it, but maybe I shouldn't be.
that's so the key is range of motion to do it doesn't necessarily keep us activating the muscles that we want if your body's losing the main idea, which is control of your shoulder blade. So if we want to work different areas on the back, that's gonna the area that you're trying to work is gonna exist with the line of pull. So if I want to work the lat that is going from here all the way down, then I want to keep my arm pulling low so that I get that lat. If I want to work my middle back, then my arm kind of comes through the middle of my body. And if I want to work my upper back, I can come through the upper part, right? So like I'm working upper back fibers, mid back fibers, and then lower lats like this. Okay. Now, the main idea with those three all-encompassing ideas is I want to make sure I have control over my shoulder blade and I'm keeping it somewhat unshrugged while I'm doing all of those. So that means that when we talk about full range of motion, if I go to any point where I lose the ability to unshrug or depress my shoulder blade, then that means I'm outside of the range of motion that I want for that exercise because I've completely lost muscle activation. So literally, if you go here, pull the arm back and roll your shoulder blade up, I can literally jiggle my lat because it's not squeezing anymore. So for lower lat work, I number one want to stay unshrugged. So I want to make sure that my shoulder is nowhere near my ears. Think long neck and an arm down. And for lower lats, I want you to stop with your elbow at your hips. That's it. Okay. So whatever you're doing, if you're sitting there right now, let's just say you're sitting at your desk watching this camera, I just want you to practice with me. So if I'm sitting there, I want to find my sit bones underneath me. I want to get nice and tall so I feel a little bit of abs. I want to think about my spine staying nice and tall, and I want to pull the arm down and towards my hip, and I want to aim my elbow towards the floor. And you should immediately start to feel your lat squeezing. So spine's going up, elbows going down, lat starting to squeeze. Okay. The nuance of this though is that if I'm in this position and the cable line is this way, but I turn my arm this way, I'm going to immediately lose my lat because now my arm's not in line with the cable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I feel it when I squeeze. Yeah.
That's it. So that's all I want you to do. Now, with that said, I want to make an adjustment for your stance so that you can get more out of this. So instead of leaning forward, okay, because that's going to kind of put you in a flared rib cage position. It did that more than I expected. I want you to just sit vertically. So I'm going to change the exercise for you.
Okay.
Okay. You can still reach up because I think the reach up will help because we talk about a little bit of rotational exercises helping your mobility and kind of opening your body up, right? So let's keep that. But I want you to think about doing this. You see how my arm is in line with the cable pull right here? I'm stopping at the front of my hip bone and I'm driving my elbow down and I'm squeezing like this while driving my spine up. I want to make sure I can do this from a stacked position because if I'm in this position here and I try to squeeze really hard and I end up arching my back like this, I'm going to lose my lat too. So don't try to get more squeeze or more contraction here by moving your spine. The more you can stay in a stacked position and drive that elbow down as hard as you can with as heavy weight as you can and squeeze your lat, that's all you need to do. That in my mind is full range of motion. And for you, reaching up and getting a good stretch without shrugging your shoulder, that's going to be full range of motion too. So the shoulder blade can move forward and protract or reach, and then it can pull right back down. So we get a stretch and a squeeze without losing your stack. So your oblique on the side that you're pulling down should be on the whole time. Okay, obliques on, exhale, find it, squeeze it, hold it. That's how we do so much core work. Hold on to that oblique, Now I'm going to stay in my stack the whole time. I'm going to get a pull. I'm going to get a squeeze. Inhale, exhale. Just like that. Any questions?
One thing that I think I feel with just messing around with that, just sitting in my chair, is not so much a contraction in my lat. I mean, I have terrible muscle awareness in my entire back. I recognize that. But a lot of times what I feel it is kind of take like my nipple and then take a straight line under my armpit. Like I feel it, it's almost like my pec, or like I'm activating my pec while I'm doing it. Not
That's okay. That's fine.
But I don't know if that's my lat or not.
Well, when I do this right here, I get some tension here, right? You're talking about. I also get some tension in my serratus because that's connected to my scap that's moving. So I get tension here, I get tension here, and I get tension a little bit underneath the pec too. So that's I get the exact same thing. Loading yourself up with weight will help you find that a little bit better. What was your question? Go ahead.
What's the serratus again?
The serratus is the muscle underneath the shoulder blade that helps it travel forward when you reach. So it's attached to the shoulder blade and it's attached to the rib cage. When I reach my arm forward, that muscle contracts to bring it forward. The pec does too, but we want the serratus to control this movement. Yeah. So if your shoulders are up here on a regular basis, they're just up there because of your posture. So it makes sense that as we start to get you taller and relaxed in this position, it's going to take a while for these to let go and start to loosen up on your neck. But we do that by reinforcing the position of a tall posture and getting the shoulder blades to do the other movements, which are depression and protraction, right? So that's why it's so important to get nice and tall and work this. And the more you're doing these pulls, you're going to start to open that area up. So that's another reason why it's like, in order to really create these postural changes and these skill adaptations, right? Because if you're trying to create a new movement pattern, if you're always going as heavy as possible, you're always going to default back into the old pattern, right? So this is you learning how to find your lat is just as much skill development as it is hypertrophy, right? Because the heavier you go, the more likely you're going to be to end up in this position. But if you go a little bit lighter, so where you can control the range of motion and just squeeze the shit out of it, that's a better rep in my opinion. And I'm cramping. So it's effective as fuck with no weight if you know what you're doing. In order to learn how to do that, you're going to need to get a lot of skill development reps in, and you can progressively overload those. But let's find a weight where you can nail the form. So number one, I'll change the video for you. Okay. Dominic, or actually Brandon, this is your job right now. Brandon, I want you to get in your notes pad on your phone, and I want you to write out when I say something on this call, like, Wes, I'm going to change your lat pull down variation. I want you to write it down for me so I have some notes, things I can refer back to on action points when we're done with the call, okay? So I'm going to change that variation for you. When I pull down and I get a good squeeze there, I can reinforce that over and over and over again with moderate weight. And the next week, I'll add 5 pounds to that, still be able to keep the form, but now I'm building strength and hypertrophy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's definitely something that like I said, I have pretty bad awareness of my back. It all just feels like around the area of my armpit.
Yeah.
Kind of all feels like one thing.
That's okay.
You know?
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. The more in tune you become with those smaller muscles, right? Like the serratus is a really small muscle in comparison to your lat. The lat covers your back, right? Like we want to build a V taper so you have a slim waist and a wide back, right? Build a little bit of muscle back there. But in order to do that, we have to master the smaller muscles of the rotator cuff and the shoulder blade too, in a way that supports your growth of that muscle long term, right? If you're just always loading the lat up all the time, then eventually you're going to pull such heavy weight that you kind of tweak your shoulder, and now you got to take 2 weeks off, right? No, we don't want to do that. We want to learn how to do it right on the front end, so you can just fucking pound weight and pull and pull and pull and grow and grow and grow. And you're like, no matter what I do, I'm nailing my lats now. And now it's your shoulders feel better, your posture feels better. But what I will say is, the number one thing, going back to the first time we worked together, the number one thing, being able to activate the larger muscle groups, right? So when we talk about muscle activation, you say, I've always had trouble activating my lats. So what first comes to mind is you've actually have a relationship of your shoulder blades, which are bones, right? They're not moving it. They're not malleable. They're the same shape, right? You can build your awareness of the movement paths of those, but how do we do that? We do that with underneath a rib cage that can expand and contract with better breathing, like we talk about. And also, once that we have the mobility of the rib cage, we need to stabilize the rib cage with our obliques. So that's why I'm always harping on stacking, staying stacked. And as you progress in your other lifts, can you still maintain that? Some of the strongest muscles on your body and most body aware muscles need to be those small fibers that keep your rib cage locked in place. The number one way to lose connection with your pecs or your delts or your lats, and like you can try as hard as you want to contract those things. If your rib cage is just loosey goosey all over the place, good luck. And I mean, that's just really what it is. If you get to a point where you're plateauing, and I mean, this is for any bodybuilding client, Brandon, if you're plateauing and you're getting to a point where like you're losing your form when you start to get to the upper edges of your PR on like a chin up or a pull down or whatever, train your ability to stay stacked in those stressed out situations with better core work and better exhales. And you're going to be able to maintain that shit when you pull 10 pounds heavier. And now your lat had the strength the whole time, but now it's full body connectivity that's allowing you to break that plateau. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Perfect. All right. So that's hopefully that answers your question. Brandon took some notes for me. So I will give you a new exercise. It's the same pull down. I'm just, instead of you being here, I'm going to have you here, and you can pull like this if you want to, because a tip I'll tell you is if you're trying to get your rib cage stable, your shoulder girdle stable, and reach with one arm to pull down, if you find the same position on the opposite side. So if I find a slight reach with my left hand, it's going to put my rib cage in a more stable position, because if you find your obliques, you can feel your serratus. And if you can find it on both sides, you're more than likely going to be able to keep it a lot more in a more stable way. So get a little bit of a side reach. That's why the reach was there. You can rotate with that reach if you want to, but if you're having trouble, get nice and stacked, reach with the opposite arm, and then hold this reach here while I'm doing my pulls, and you'll feel more connected. Cool?
Okay. Cool.
Okay. What other questions you got?
Is that, so talking about the serratus, when you gave me alternating dumbbell bench press.
Yes.
With a reach on the opposite arm.
Yes. Connect those dots, Wes. Let's go. Same shit. No, that's it. That's exactly what we're doing. So if you literally think about the way that feels, now get rid of the press weight and pull. Same thing, just a different angle.
Yes.
Makes sense. You got it.
That's training the serratus.
Well, it's the serratus. So because it's a loaded exercise, the serratus is involved in that. If you're allowing your shoulder blades to move, which I do want you to do. Remember when you sent me that video, you were packed, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That means if I am fully retracted in my press, that's okay if you're doing heavy bench press. If you want to stabilize your shoulder blades by packing and doing your barbell right there, that's a way to really, really get heavy 1 rep, 2 rep, 5 rep sets in for barbell bench press, where you need to just lock into place. If we want to increase mobility, get active full range of motion, then doing dumbbells, alternating or single arm, we want the shoulder blades to be from a stacked position. We want them to be able to move without packing them so much that I flare my ribs. So I'm trying to say, let's train the stack in all of your exercises. So that's why it's here, a little bit of a reach, and I feel my serratus on this side, and I'm just getting that press. I'm allowing the shoulder blade to move though, right? I'm not stuck here. So I'm unshrugged. I'm letting it go. A little bit of retraction, a little bit of protraction, just a small window. But be able to maintain a little bit of feeling of the serratus, but you should definitely still feel your pec and a little bit of shoulder. It's still a chest exercise. But but you doing single arm alternating exercises is meant to start to get those smaller muscles engaged and happy and healthy and organized, so that when it's like, all right, Wes, we're going to go into a strength phase now. You're going to be doing your running. We're going to go to the gym. We're going to hit heavier weights and try to build a little bit more muscle after you've lost 50 pounds or whatever. Then we might go to different exercises that call for more stability, packing the shoulder blades, doing different things, but your serratus will be in shape and be able to help out more. as opposed to if we were going to do heavy shit now, it'd be like, good luck, boys. And your shoulder blades are popping up and they're moving and you can't stay organized, right? So the main idea is that's why you're like, what principles are we doing right now? It's number one, skill development, but that doesn't mean because of the type of program we're running that we can't still see weight loss, cardio gains, strength gains, hypertrophy gains, but we got to do it in a way that's more focused on consistency and slowly progressing you.